I have with me Karen Karniol-Tambour here at the Conference of Paris. Thank you so much for making the time. The conference's theme is towards an inclusive globalization. As a woman in a very senior role, how do you see firms have done in bridging the gender gap in senior executive roles, and how do you see Bridgewater's initiatives in the next 5 to 10 years in ensuring that there's longevity in initiatives?
Well, I think the really significant change we've seen in the industry in the last few years is a deep recognition that something is wrong. I think when I joined the industry, the more common conversation was, well, we're a meritocratic industry, so there are no women. There are no women. We're good people. We mean well. We promote people who make sense to us, and so it's not our fault. And now there's much more recognition that even well-meaning people, there's a sense that if there are no women around, and women are 50% of the talent, we're missing a lot of the great talent. So that recognition that I see really having seeped into practices all the way from, apologies, really seeped into practices all the way from recruiting to promotion to just the way the conversation is going, I think is really changing the environment around just acknowledging the issue and being willing to have more proactive pushes to make a change and making it okay to put that on the table and say, can leadership look different? To me, the really important strides are happening today because one of the biggest barriers is if you've never seen a woman in leadership, you may really hope it'll happen, but you've just never had a mental model like that in your mind. So you just can't quite visualize it. And even very well-meaning people just imagine leadership the way they'd seen it before. And so to me, what's happening today is some of the most important steps because the generation after us won't have that problem. They will have seen many more women in positions of power. And so it'll be, I think, much more easier and intuitive and less problematic to even imagine that leadership could be 50-50.
You've touched on reimagining how things look like. A large part of why there's such public discord in globalization is the wealth disparity. How do you see the financial sector bringing strides in bridging this gap? If so, and pushing on that envelope a bit further, do you see that finance will be restructured or re-engineered in the next 5 to 10 years? Or is this a mantle that's, far-fetched, but firms are trying to do as much as they can now?
Well, I think that finance has been early to recognize that global inequality is a very big issue. And there are ways that finance as an industry can play a role in changing that, expanding financial services to more people, and in my view, really helping more people own their financial futures and have pensions. One of the biggest problems in the wealthy countries, we're here at the OECD, is, well, what percentage of people in wealthy countries do actually have a vehicle to save, to have pensions for the future, or if all financial wealth is concentrated at the top, very naturally you're going to get a big disparity in people at the bottom that need to think differently and psychologically about their future when they have no savings. And so building finance to have more vehicles for people to save and invest and have access to capital markets is one of the very big pushes. But there's also a limit to what finance can do. And I think that finance, a lot of leaders have been out there in saying that global inequality is a big problem that finance alone cannot solve. And policymakers and the way our capitalism is organized needs to be a part of that.
And my last question for you is, how do you see conferences such as the Conference of Paris fitting into the theme towards an inclusive globalization, and what do you hope to take away from this conference?
Well, what I love about conferences like this is that they help set the tone for what is the discussion everyone must have and the questions we must all ask ourselves. And 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would go around the world to see clients. These topics were not on the agenda. This was not what investors thought they needed to be speaking about. And conferences like this help set the tone in saying, no, if you are a large asset owner, these are questions you must ask yourself. You have a responsibility to ask how you contribute to these issues, and it makes it more real and less theoretical and shows that there's more of a dialogue and peers that are thinking about these issues, makes their responsibility real. So I'm very excited to be here, meet people, and help contribute to that change in the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. That's all the time we have for today.